welcome to the JB show. This is show number 120. My guest today is Jeff Cohen. Jeff Cohen is a good friend of mine. We've done a lot of things, a lot of different conferences that he's actually presented at that I have in the past, and we'll introduce him in a real quick second here. But first we do that, as always, we're going to get to our sponsor, and as our sponsor, as always, is My Fulfillment Team. My Fulfillment Team is a state-of-the-art inventory processing. You source, we process, you profit. Right now is a great time for you guys to be using My Fulfillment Team. My Fulfillment Team is just one of those things that will actually merchant fulfill for you. They can do Walmart, they can do, any of the other platforms as well as Amazon. But with Amazon having restrictions right now on only having essentials going in there, you should check them out because they can do all those other things for you with merchant fulfilling. They will receive, store, prep, pack, ship, Amazon Plus. What they do is they can label, they can bundle, they can bag, multi-packs, you name it, they can do it. They have state-of-the-art bubble machines that makes their own bubble. They are a specialized prep company you can trust, family-owned, operated for 9 years now. Millions of items processed. Never touch your inventory again. Automate your process. Pay for only the services you need. Experienced family-owned business, guys. Check them out at www.myfulfillmentteam.com. All right, guys, we're back, and I have with me today, again, like I said, my good friend, Jeff Cohen. I haven't talked to Jeff in a long time, so we're catching up a little bit, too. He's been with Seller Labs for, I forget, how many years you say now, Jeff?
I think I'm going up on 6 years now.
6 years on Seller Labs?
Yeah.
Before we get started, guys, we do have a presentation that Jeff is going to do today, or we were going to do, the 80-20 rule of Amazon advertising. We want you guys to put in the chat if that is what you want to hear, or do you need us to pivot and have Jeff talk about what's working now with the times that we're in now. So we would like to know.
Yeah, I think it's a, John, as we were talking before we went live, we booked this back in January, right? And so it's not to say that the data isn't still relevant and the concept isn't still relevant, but there's also a lot of questions that are very pressing on people's minds right now and today. So I think the question is do we focus on those pressing questions and concerns and talk through that or go through the presentation? I'm good going either way.
All right, guys. So in the chat, could you please post if you want us to continue with the presentation that we planned on since January, or do you want us to pivot and talk more about what's working now because of the times that we're in? I see JR put either works for me.
Flexibility is a good thing, right?
Yep, exactly. Thanks for joining me, JR. Others, I guess they don't have an opinion either way. So whatever you think's going to work, Jeff, it doesn't seem to matter.
Yeah, I mean, it works best if we have, I think it works best. How about we do this? Let's go through the presentation. It'll take about 20 minutes. After we do the presentation, if we want to just answer questions, not just about the presentation, but about the general state of the market, things that are going on, things that we're seeing with our clients, I'd be happy to answer questions on that as well. So the people that tuned in today specifically for a particular topic can still get that topic. But for those that want to kind of just shoot the bull about our industry and what's happening, we can do that as well. Does that sound good?
Guys, type a 1 if that sounds good to you in the chat. We got
right.
1, so yeah, that sounds good.
All right, that sounds good. So let me jump into this. And I think that what I'm sharing today is still generally relevant in the idea that what I wanted to talk about was the concept of the 80-20 rule. It's also known as the Pareto principle. And one of the playbooks or Bibles, for lack of a better term, that I've used within marketing is this book here. It's called 80-20 Sales and Marketing. It was written by a guy named Perry Marshall. If you've been around the space for any considerable period of time, you know Perry, because Perry really came up with this concept early on in the Google days. And been able to take a lot of what he taught us about Google and AdWords and apply it into the Amazon side of the business. And really, it's about focusing on data that matters. And we can apply it to what's happening today, because the focus on data that matters typically in an Amazon situation is focusing on data over a long period of time. Today, we need to be focusing data over a short period of time. And so if you go and you look at 6 months or 2 months worth of data around a particular product or a particular ad campaign, it's not indicative to what's happening with that campaign today. And so 80/20 is your ability to focus in on that data. So for people that don't know me, my name is Jeff Cohen. I've been with Seller Labs for about 6 years, as I mentioned. I started in the Amazon ecosystem back in like 2005, working for a textbook wholesaler, had the ability to start selling our excess inventory on Amazon and eBay. So I've been involved in Amazon e-commerce for a long time now, almost 15 plus years. That's kind of scary to think about. And I've been involved in all different aspects of Amazon e-commerce as it's evolved. The Pareto principle, the principle of 80/20, is one that governs what I and how I look at Amazon and Amazon sellers. It also governs how I do any marketing that exists within my own business. And the Pareto principle, by its very nature, says that 20% of the input accounts for 80% of the output. And we typically have heard this concept talked about, but we don't think about its true implications. And so when we think about the input, the time, the resource, the effort, and the result and the reward, the output, it's actually a definition that allows us to start breaking down our effort for our reward. And so what's really cool about the 80/20 principle is that it can be applied to anything in life. And so if you study the Pareto principle by its very nature, you start to see that 20% of the roads get 80% of the traffic. Okay. 20% of your customers drive 80% of your revenue. The reverse is also true, which is that 80% of the work completed is completed by 20% of your team. And it doesn't matter what we're looking at, whether we're talking about web traffic, whether we're talking about advertising waste, advertising effectiveness, conversion data, the 80/20 rule applies. Now, what Perry Marshall discovered in this book that I was talking about earlier, what Perry Marshall discovered is that 80/20 is not just true once, but it's true over and over and over again. And so if we go back to like math, right, that becomes a powerful exponent of the equation. And as we start to drive this, what we find is that when we're looking at the 80/20 principle, we say that 80% of traffic is on 20% of the roads. That actually means that 64% of the travelers drive on only 4% of the roads. Now follow me here. And then we can do that again, that we can take 80% of the 80% of the 80% that runs on the 20% of the 20% of the 20%, which tells us that 52% of the travelers drive on 0.8% of the roads. And I can keep taking this exponential factor down. And what that does is it actually starts to give me an X factor, or the power that one thing has over something else. So this means, like, let's just say I have a salesperson. If I hire 10 salespeople, I'm going to have 2 that are actually producing 80% of the sales. Those 2 aren't just marginally better than the other 8 salespeople. They're 16 times better than the other salespeople. So as we start to see about where we spend our time, where we spend our energy, where we spend our effort, we start to see the reward that we can get from the effort being put into a particular place. Now, this gets really kind of complicated, and I'm not a math guy in any way, shape, or form. But what it does do is it starts to tell me focus and where I need to place my focus. So whether I'm looking at, again, whether I'm looking at the wealthiest people in the world, whether I'm looking at the roads driven by people, or whether I'm looking at advertising, I can start to calculate the effort that I put in and the reward that I'm going to get from it. And so what we want to do is take this 80-20 principle and create an approach to using it. So I ask, like, what numbers are you watching and why? How do you use the data? And how can you focus on that data? And those are the three things. What are the numbers? How are you going to make an informed decision? And how can you focus? And if we can focus on those three things along the way, we can drive really powerful results. So we're going to specifically look at advertising. Oh, I'm jumping all over the place. We're going to specifically look at advertising, but in addition to looking at advertising, understand that these principles can be applied to your inventory, your traffic, your profitability, right? All the different aspects of your business. And, you know, what we see and what I've seen over and over again is that sellers a lot of time are spending their effort working on products that don't drive any sales or don't drive any profit. So we're going to look specifically at advertising because that's what we prepared this to talk about. But understand that if you take this principle and you understand the data that matters and you understand how to apply the 80-20 principle to look at the right data, you can apply this into any aspect of your business along the way. So with Amazon advertising, we look at three data points, primarily three data points. The ACoS, the advertising cost of sale, the TACoS, the total advertising cost of sale, and the ROAS, the return on ad spend. So let's just kind of define these a little bit so everybody kind of understands exactly what we're talking about. Advertising cost of sale is a direct relationship between the total ad spend and the attributable sales, okay? Quick little definition. Understand that when we're talking about ACoS, we're talking about an ad-centric approach because I'm only looking at the ads that are connected to the sales. So it's not actually also looking at the total implication that advertising has across my catalog. It only looks at specifically my spend and my sales that are generated. So in this little example that I give, if I have a spend of $100 and sales of $1,000, I have a 10% ACoS. The problem is that when I only focus on ACoS, I'm only looking at a portion of the sales and I'm not looking at the power that those sales have to generate across the larger catalog of my business, which is really your TACoS, your total advertising cost of sale. Now, when you start to look at TACoS, you get into what we call a non-ad centric metric. I'm now looking at total revenue, not just advertising revenue. And this is allowing me to start looking at things like my margin, my TACoS, and my profitability. Because my total advertising cost of sale minus my margin is giving you my total profit. And that's ultimately, for business owners, what we want to figure out. How much profit can I generate from the advertising dollars that I'm spending? That rolls us into the third metric, the return on ad spend. Because I just said that I want to figure out, how do I turn my advertising into an ATM machine? I want to stick $1 into the machine and I want to get multiple dollars back. If I asked all of you today to give me $1 and in exchange I would give you $5, how many of you would give me $1? I'm guessing most of you would give me $1 if I was giving you $5 back. So return on ad spend is a different way to measure your advertising that gives you a sense of how much money you're spending and how much money you're getting back. So now that we understand this difference between return on ad spend, ACoS, and TACoS, we can actually start to figure out how to use this data in our business. Because remember, the 80-20 rule is going to tell us to spend our money where we can put the least amount of money to work to get the highest result for that spend. The least amount of money means I want to put my 20% of my ad spend to get my 80% of result. Or I want to figure out the 20% of keywords that I should be focusing on that drive my 80% of sales. I want to figure out how I can be more efficient, my return on ad spend, by putting more dollars into the right place. And what a lot of people do wrong when looking at advertising is they try to spend a lot of money across a large catalog with a lot of keywords, and then they're not actually able to drive enough results to dictate a return on their investment that's worth the risk that they're taking. Now think about that. We want to make an investment into our advertising based on the amount of risk that we're taking. So when you bought your inventory, you took risk. When you spent money on advertising, you took risk. When you got a third-party logistics to help you with shipping, you took on risk. All of the things you do in business are taking on risk, and you want a return on investment that's equal to the risk that you're taking in your business. So if I'm looking specifically at ACost, I'm trying to do things that might set my ACost too low and limit my growth. I might find some total advertising cost of sales that are driving my overall performance, but I have some ASINs in my catalog that are dragging me down. And so I want to be able to look across the board to see how these numbers start to interact with each other so that I can focus my attention on the pieces that matter. I want to find that optimal point where my ACost is doing well and my tacos is reacting correctly. So how much am I willing to drive down my ACost if it increases my tacos? And this is a great example of how if you don't look at these numbers in parallel with each other, one might start to negatively impact the other. So I started to drive my ACost down to 7%, but I drove my total advertising cost of sale up to 6%. But if I'm able to bring my advertising cost of sale down from 10% to 8%, and I'm only increasing my tacos by 1%, maybe that's where I want, but it still is costing me more money. So the first example where my ACost is actually higher, my tacos is at the lowest. And that's where I ultimately want to be. That's where I'm spending an optimal amount of money for the perfect return on my investment. And so don't get hung up on a particular number because you heard somebody talk about, oh, you need to lower your ACost. Oh, you need to lower your ACost, because ACost doesn't always tell you exactly how things are going to play out. But by looking at these numbers in relation to one another, you see how one is beginning to impact the other, and you can find your time for focus. So now that we have a general understanding of some of the different metrics that we want to use within our advertising, let's figure out where to go look. Inside Seller Central, there's a report called Business Report by Child ASIN. The Business Report by Child ASIN is one of the most valuable reports within Seller Central because it gives you two extremely critical pieces of information that you can't find anywhere else. It's going to give you your session data. That's the number of people that are visiting your page. And it's going to give you your session percentage, which is your conversion rate. And here's where you can start to figure out where you want to put focus into particular things. So I took this out. I ran it through a little macro Excel that would give me a color identification to tell me anything that had over 1,000 sessions. And I wanted to find conversion rates above 10%. So anything in the column on the left that's red is below 1,000 conversions. Anything that's on the right in red is below a 10% conversion. So if I have low sessions and low conversion, I have a poor performing ASIN. And I need to be focusing on improving the conversion before I focus on the traffic. Where I have green on the left and red on the right, I have good traffic on the ASIN, but I have poor conversion. I need to strictly be focusing on conversion. So we talk again about the 80-20 rule, and we talk about how we focus our attention on the right effort, right? That's what we talked about before. It's putting yourself to focus on the right effort. The right effort for these ASINs is not to drive more advertising, but to focus specifically on conversion. The focus on the top ones where I have good session counts and good conversion rates is to actually put my focus onto driving more traffic, because I have a return on ad spend based on my conversion rate that tells me when I send people to this page, they buy the product. So we're talking specifically about advertising, but we're not even looking at an advertising report. And that's something very critical to understand, because to get your advertising to work, you have to take steps forward and backwards that allow you to see the whole picture. So that's where I start here in understanding where I want to put my effort. Now, when I get down to some of the session data, when I get down to some of the session data that has low session and low conversion rate, I want to start to look at my profitability. And if my profitability isn't there, I want to ask myself if it's better for me to focus my attention on something totally different, as opposed to focusing my attention on that particular ASIN. We get very emotional about the products in our catalog, and it's the one thing we have to break. We have to break the emotion connected to this. Everything that we do has to be a metric, profit-based decision. I don't care how much time I put into that particular product. If it's not selling, I want to get rid of it. Okay, so let's look at this in a real-life example. I looked at a business report for a company that had 361 products in their offering. They were roughly advertising around 76% of their catalog. They had relatively low ad spend waste, around $1,100. They had about $225 in ASIN targeting with 0 sales. So there was some like quick wins that I could grab and some quick wasted ad spend that I could stop my effort on. And I say not really bad, because in relative terms, they were spending around $25,000 a month in advertising. So they're a rather large client. But when I started to focus in 80-20, and I started to look in specifically where I could make the biggest return for my effort, what I was able to do is I was able to go in and look at, well, what's underfunded? Okay. And so in this example, I'm using a term called ACOP, which is the same as tacos. And I'm able to look at these and say, what's underfunded? And if, again, what we talked about before, if I look at the A cost, I'm going to look at the first product at 39% and say my A cost is really high. But when I look at it from the taco perspective, it's not really high because it's only 2.4% of the total sales. So when I look at it, not just from the spend to the advertising sales, but I look at it from the spend to the total sales, it's only 4% of the traffic is coming from paid. So these are all opportunities that if I was to look at this from a strictly A cost perspective, I might cut these out because I say, oh, I want a 20% A cost. But as soon as I look at these from a total advertising cost of sale perspective, I'm looking at these totally differently, and I see these as investment opportunities to grow my sales. These are dollars well spent. Any dollar put into here is going to give me a good return on my investment. The opposite is always true, is also true. Now, you might look at this and go, well, Jeff, no duh, you're at 230% A cost. Of course you want to stop advertising. But maybe, just maybe, I'm trying to launch this. It's a new product. So I'm okay with a 60% advertising cost of product. Now, for me, that'd be really high and I'd be losing money. And I think for most of us, we'd be losing money. So you have to be looking at, where am I going to spend my effort and get return? Looking at overfunded campaigns, looking at campaigns within your catalog that are wasting your ad spend are quick wins to go in and figure out what's going on and start making some changes. Now I can look in here and I can see, based off of the sessions, right? 623 orders, 37, I have a very low conversion rate. So while it's overfunded, it's also converting poorly. And if I'm able to double my conversion rate, if I'm able to go from 6% to 12%, guess what happens? My advertising cost of product will drop by half or more, from 59% to about 30%. And then the reason I say more is that as I start generating more sales, as I start pulling one particular lever within Amazon, other levers start to pull. So I don't just say that you give up on these. You have to look at these specifically and figure out what effort is there and whether it's necessary. So I break down the spending of your ads into the three categories, right? So we have the underfunded, where can I put more monies, the overfunded or wasted ad spend, and then finally missed opportunities. And this is specifically looking at what are ASINs that I'm just not advertising in any way, shape, or form. And if I've got a decent amount of session traffic and I have a decent session percentage conversion rate, why would I not want to advertise these and drive more sales? And this is where I want to put my investment. So within advertising, we're able to look at thousands of advertising campaigns every month. And that's what kind of drives us to some of the conclusions that we have specifically around the 80-20 principle and how we apply it. And what we do specifically in our company and with the campaigns we manage. So we have two systems, right? We have our software system, which is it's kind of like a do-it-yourself. The system, will give you suggestions, recommendations. We also have a management system where we literally go out and we manage the ads for you. And so what we're able to do when we break down ad campaigns is put them through a rigorous, we call it our CAT profile, which is the campaign assessment tool, to look at all these different data criteria that will visually help you understand where your account is underperforming and overperforming. And I did something special for you here, John. I didn't even tell you about this beforehand, but I talked to my team. Typically, the campaign assessment tool is something we only offer to our current paid clients. But I've made arrangements so that anybody on your team that would like us to run this assessment can have this assessment ran for them. And so what we'll do is we'll put up instructions here at the end, and you'll send us a bulk file. And from that file, we'll be able to give you a whole bunch of data of what's happening in your account. We look at it over a 60-day time period, but then we can also analyze it over like the last week or the last 2 weeks to see how trends are changing with what's going on in today's current environment. It gives us a lot of detail into sponsored brands. It gives us detailed into bid strategies, keyword and keyword targeting, campaign structure. And what's cool about this is that you send us your data. It's just a single file. We'll send you back this full-blown report. And then every one of these reports has like filters you can go in and you can change things around and you can start to look at this data in different ways. So, somebody said, will Jeff show us how we actually do this with the reports? Not only will I show it, we'll do a report for you. No purchase is necessary. You just get this for being on the webinar. So the only thing I need to tell you that's different, because I literally just got permission to do this, is we just need to change this line. So here, let's do this live. We're going to change this line to call it Pro Talk. So you're going to add Pro Talk into the subject line, and that's going to, let's see. Am I back on screen share there? Yep. Okay. So you're going to add Pro Talk into the subject line, and that's going to tell our team that this came, just that this came from you. And we'll get back in touch with you. We'll send you a copy of the report, and we'll show you how to use it so you can start digging through your data to find out where your data is that matters and how to apply that to your specific advertising situation. So kind of ran through that quickly. Happy to answer any additional questions or talk about the industry in general and kind of what's going on.
Yeah, that was awesome. That's a lot of great information. You can hear me, right?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. So, Jeff, who is this not for?
Well, that's a great question. So, you know, the question I get a lot, I think, is how much money do I need to spend in advertising for it to matter? So advertising is data driven. So the more data you have, the better data driven decisions you can make around your advertising. I think that this really does, the more, you know, so somebody who's only spending $100, $100 a week, $10 a day, $15 a day might not get enough data in here for it to really be valid. You know, one of the things that I've shared with in a group earlier, I'll share this with you, which I think is really interesting. I think a lot of people in your group are on the wholesale retail side of the equation. And one of the questions that I get quite often is like, how does advertising different between owning the brand and being like a wholesale reseller? And so we worked with an accountant. His name's Tyler Jeffcoat. He has a company called Seller Accountant. And he did an analysis of over $100 million of Amazon GMV. And when he looked at that data, what he was able to find was that the gross profit, so the profit before advertising for a private brand was around 40%. That gross profit for a wholesale or a retailer was around 20%. But they both did advertising. The big difference is that a private brand was at around 8.5% for a tacos, a total advertising cost of sale, whereas a wholesale and retailer was like 1.5%. And so advertising works in both regards, whether you're a wholesale retailer or a private owner. You just have to analyze it in a totally different manner based, again, on what your total operating profit or operating profit targets are that you're going for.
So would somebody coming into this and they wanted to do this, because I'm real curious to this answer, and they're doing just retail arbitrage, would you recommend them paying to get more exposure with retail arbitrage stuff? Because it's also going to help their competitors. Yeah.
So what I always say with anyone who's kind of doing more of the RA or OA model is, again, focus of effort, 80-20 rule. Focus your effort on the ads that are maybe something that you have replenishment for, right? So if it's a one-time pickup, it's kind of hard to advertise for that product. The way advertising works, if you're not familiar, is that your ad will only appear if you own the buy box. But advertisers or buyers will see your ad and may come back and purchase later. And if your competitor owns the buy box when they come back, they're going to get the sale. So it's still possible to do it, but you want to either be deep on your inventory, you want to have a decent share of the buy box, or you want to have replenishable to where if you are helping the product in general, but like you're one of 3 sellers or you're one of 10 sellers, you're still benefiting from the investment that you're making. In the same regard of like, you still want to update, listings that are bad if you have if you have stock in a particular product.
Awesome. Guys, any questions you have yet for Jeff? We went over a lot of different stuff. Is this the kind of stuff that you wanted to hear? Are you confused about any of it? Is there anything you need more clarity on?
What happens when they raise their hand? What does that mean? That means they clicked the wrong button.
I don't see a raise of hand, but I'm not sure how that works on Zoom. Maybe somebody can help me with that. I've been doing these for a long time. I've seen that, but when I click on it, it really doesn't do anything. So
Yeah, I don't know. Somebody, they raise their hand like they have a question, but then they don't have a question.
yeah, just post your question in the chat for Jeff, and we'll get them answered for you. That's why Jeff's here. We want to make sure we get all your questions answered.
I'm also, I think that, we've also been dealing a lot in the last, 2 weeks with what do I do if I'm advertising a product that's not available for delivery until the end of April. And so I think that these are new challenges that we as Amazon advertisers have. And I think that, the way I've been answering that question, I think, is twofold. One is, if you have a merchant fulfilled option, Amazon's made updates to their algorithm over the weekend, and that fulfilled option will now win the buy box, and advertising potentially makes sense. Two is that I think it depends on kind of what's happening across your category. And so many times we look at the category in general, and if you're kind of holding your position, you can scale back your advertising. So a lot of products that we've seen, their BSR has gotten worse, but their page rank hasn't changed. And it's just because the essential products are jumping up in terms of popularity. And Amazon in general is going to have to do a lot of algorithmic changes once this all settles out.
So I do have a question for you. It says, do you recommend a small bid for the whole catalog? In other words, a 5-cent bid for the whole catalog.
Yeah. And I also want to say at the end, you said you meant that I mentioned this once at a conference, and I would say, when did I mention it? And I'm not trying to challenge you, JR. I'm just saying that the advertising strategies from 2 years ago are different than the advertising strategies of today. My answer to would you bid 5 cents for the whole catalog is it depends what your budget is. And so I have a slide on this, but it's not in this presentation. So think about like what your budget is in a particular day. Let's just use a simple example of $10. If you're bidding $1 a bid, you only have access to be spending that on a particular, on 10 particular keywords or one product or 10 products. You're going to max that out pretty quickly. So if you want to keep an ad campaign at a nickel, I don't know that that's something that I really recommend anymore these days. I think you're better off making quality bid recommendations for the keywords that are going to drive your product, right? So if you take the 80-20 rule and you apply it into advertising in this particular manner, 80% of your sales will come from 20% of your keywords, which typically means that if you had 10 keywords, only 2 are driving sales. So if you can focus on the 2 that are driving sales, you're going to get much better results from those 2 than you will from anywhere else. Because remember what we talked about at the beginning when we talked about the 16-to-1 power, right? So if I can take the power of those 2 keywords, they perform 16 times better than the other 8 keywords combined. That's where I want to put my money. I want to put my money where it's going to work the best for me, and spraying my money all over the place isn't going to give me that answer. If you want to bid 5 cents for all of your keywords, that's where I think you go auto keywords and you let Amazon kind of figure that out for you. And you'll notice that with Amazon auto campaigns, they follow the 80-20 rule, and you'll get zoned in on your bids going to particular keywords that are driving actions or transactions for you.
I have a question for you, Jeff. So 2 type of ads, like what JR was talking about, doing a 5-cent ad, but not across the whole category. But a 5-cent ad versus a $5 ad pay per click. Will you get better data from either or?
Repeat that one more time. I just want to make sure I heard it correctly.
If you're doing a 5 cent per click versus a $5 per click, will you get better data from either or?
Well, you're gonna get. So I did this as a test on a product that I own. I have a very small Amazon account. I'm pretty open about it. I think I made $100,000. I sold $100,000 last year. I didn't make $100,000. And I took one of my products and I decided to wipe out all of the campaigns. And I went and I took my highest volume keyword that was driving sales, and I bid that keyword up really high. So like you just said, I took one keyword, one product, $5 a keyword. I put all my money into that product. I was able to generate more sales from that one keyword than I was from my whole campaign before that. Because Amazon is going to reward you as things are going well. And so if I can take the stuff that's working and I can invest into the stuff that's working, Amazon is going to continue to reward me with more traffic, because traffic is going to generate more sales.
Plus, the other part of that equation is that if it is $5 for something that's doing well and the bid is not that high, Amazon is only going to make you pay for the highest bid.
Yeah, and Amazon has all the, I mean, we're getting into a lot of the technical stuff now of advertising, but Amazon has all these, like, you know, do you bid 250 and then add a bid multiplier to it? Do you pay more for top placement? And so, you know, all of those things, again, break down into the different data points of, you know, how much do I need? You know, take a $5 bid, but maybe I only need to bid $2, you know, to get top placement. Am I better off making a bid for 250 and then using my other 250 to increase my placement when my data indicates that my ads perform better? And so you have you have a placement report. So if I go back up into here on this slide, this is a picture from inside of Ignite, our ad tool. This report here is showing you what percentage of your sales are coming from your top of placement versus your product page versus your other placement. So as I start to look at these other components that potentially drive and interact with my sales and my opportunities, it gives me a chance to kind of see what's happening and, again, where I want to put more of my focus and effort.
Yeah, I was just curious of how Amazon looks at it. If you're doing a 5 cent ad versus a $2 ad, if you're going to get better exposure because you're paying more and better data.
You are going to, I mean, Amazon's going to give you exposure based on the success that your ads are seeing. So as your ads are demonstrating that impressions equal clicks, which is called the CTR, the click-through ratio, and the clicks drive conversions, which is the conversion number and conversion rate. Those are the things that Amazon's looking for, because it's telling somebody that you want AirPods, you search for the term AirPods, you saw this ad and you bought AirPods. That's what Amazon wants to do. That's what Amazon wants to connect.
Okay. All right, guys, any more questions before we pivot? We're going to pivot a little bit here. We went through this presentation. We're going to talk a little bit about now and today and what the way things are now, what Jeff thinks is working and we should be doing.
If any questions come up, we can always jump back.
I'm not seeing any questions right now. So
no, if anyone has them, they can ask. We can always jump back in and cover it.
Also, if you want to put in the chat too, how they can contact you if they just want to, you know, reach out to you personally and get some answers or more clarity on what their business is doing and what you think they should be kind of concentrating on and doing.
Awesome.
I love the download file that you said that they can do and you'll analyze their business. I think anybody that has a chance to do that and uses that code or whatever you put in there, I think it was Pro Talk or something.
Yeah, you just have to email us that file.
I think that's great. I mean, anybody should take advantage of that because at least it's going to give you some insight to looking at your business and probably more depth than what you're used to, and be able to see things that maybe you didn't see. I call them the gaps in your business.
Well, I think I mean, listen, I think in general, anytime somebody's willing to take a look at your business, you should take them up on it, because there's a good chance that just somebody from the outside is going to look at your business and tell you something that you can't see, because we get emotional about our own businesses, right? We get emotional about how all of these things work. And sometimes we spend too much time working in our business and not enough time working on our business. And sometimes having somebody give you an outside perspective helps.
And I think people also, have private label products that they base on volume, but their volume is based on very little profit, where they could get products that, using this system that you're doing, where you can start to get higher profit and you don't have to turn as many.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, it's better to work smarter than harder.
Exactly. And that, and by its nature, like, listen, Perry and I are friends. We've met for coffee. He gives this book away for I think you have to give him a penny or something like that. But if you go to perrymarshall.com, I think you can get this book for like a penny. I'll warn you, the real cost of this book is that he hits you up with a lot of, emails and offers and things like that. But most of his offers are pretty good. So take a look at it. You can get this book on his site for a penny. And this book changed the way I looked at a lot of things, more than just advertising, just how I looked at business in general and trying to put focus in the right categories.
That's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about Seller Central. I mean, Seller Labs, I'm sorry. You had me on Seller Central because you were showing me all the Seller Central stuff about Seller Labs.
Yeah.
Where do you think, with everything that's going on, and the world is definitely going to be changed from this whole thing, where is Seller Central think they're going to be pivoting in to help benefit sellers?
Yeah. So I think that, in general, I believe that the direction and vision for Seller Labs hasn't changed and shouldn't change. We're still committed to helping sellers build digital commerce, and that's our basic mission and vision for our business. Now, I think that there's some curveballs that we have to be willing to accept and see within the marketplace in the short term. But I not to be overly optimistic. We're in a bad time, right? I'll just be totally honest. We're in a bad time. People are dying. Businesses are suffering. There's no question about that. But typically from disruption comes opportunity. And I think that whether it's Seller Labs or whether it's you and your own business, you have to look at the disruption that's occurring and understand what opportunity comes from it. I read an interesting article in 2003 during the SARS epidemic, which mainly focused on Asia. They shut down the Canton Fair. So it was like the first time Canton Fair had really been canceled. Well, there was a small little company back then in 2003 that decided that because of the lack of access to the Canton Fair and what happened, they needed to create a way for people to still be able to buy products and access manufacturers directly. Thus, AliExpress was born. And so when you look at the growth of their company and Alibaba in general, they saw the disruption that occurred by Asia being shut down. And they said, what opportunity is here? And they created a way for us to be able to source products online without having to go to the Canton Fair. And so I think that as sellers on the platform, that's what we have to be looking at is like, what's the disruption and what's the opportunity and how do we best take advantage of that? I don't see Seller Labs making any major pivots. I still think that advertising is a critical component. We've batched all of our tools together to sell them as an all-in-one. So 3 months ago, you would buy individual tools for us. Today, when you buy a tool, you get all of our technology combined. Last October, we acquired a company in the e-commerce space. And so we're starting to build out more and more offerings for people to give them the ability to build their own store, whether they're building a marketplace, a drop ship site, or a direct-to-consumer site. The technology is there for you to build your own store, your own technology, and have an alternative place for people to buy your product when things like the Amazon shutdown occur.
Will Seller Labs work with any other platform other than Amazon?
Yeah, I mean, our first growth is going to be into our own e-commerce platform. I think that it's a natural growth to look at other marketplaces. Right now, Amazon is the biggest marketplace in the world, at least for US-based consumers. I think Alibaba is probably the biggest marketplace in the world.
Right.
But we, we can go to Walmart, and we've looked at adding Walmart, and it's on our roadmap for 2020. But Walmart is a lot more strict in who they're letting in the door. So I think that the greatest value that we have is the consumers who are on Amazon and continuing to provide for them. Providing them an opportunity to grow into their own e-commerce store and then other channels along the way.
So let's look at facts. We know that more people are going to come out of this scared, and more people are not going to go to the regular stores like they did when we come out of this. That's fact one. Fact two is we know because of this virus that there is going to be an influx of online sellers that are testing online buying that have never done before. Would online sales have gotten to that point? Maybe in the future, but not as quickly as it's going to be coming out of this. There's going to be so many more people that buy online that never even thought about buying online. So that's a fact. We know that's going to happen. So knowing those facts, what are some of the other facts that you feel is going to be coming up because of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can look at that disruption and, think about Zoom, okay? Like, I don't know if you caught this in the news the other day, but there's a company called Zoom Technologies. They had to pause trading on Zoom Technologies because people were buying their stock. They thought they were Zoom, the webinar company. It was a different company, same name. So I think that work from home is going to change. I think that there are a lot more companies that are going to have a remote work capability and policy. And so I think in the past we've seen it primarily work from home being like the gig economy or some of the startup businesses. But I think that you're going to see in general that people are able to work from home and there's more flexibility in the work from home type of environment. I think that I agree with you. I think that the adoption of digital commerce is going to skyrocket faster than what was originally predicted. It'll slow down. This will probably be a peak, and we'll see a little bit of a drop when things go back to normal, and then we'll see it pick back up again. But I think you're going to find that consumer brands that have not fully invested into the internet and have not fully invested into their direct-to-consumer strategy are going to take that a lot more seriously in the future, because you have to have a disruption plan that accounts for people only being able to shop online, and that's never been more evident than it is today. I think that similar to what we see with a lot of crisis, changes, disruptions like this, we're going to see a lot of people go out of business, and that's just the honest truth of people who, made bad business decisions, didn't have good cash flow management, and had difficulty weathering the storm. Somebody said this to me yesterday. The ones that will survive are the ones that were thriving before, right? So you can't just all of a sudden turn it on and go, now I'm going to be a thriving company that moves and adapts. If that was part of your DNA, right? If your DNA was to figure stuff out and pivot with the market as things pivot, then you're probably doing okay and you're not freaking out. Ask yourself a question like, have you opened up a merchant fulfilled option? Amazon's been down for over a week. If you haven't figured that out yet, you're being too slow to react. We did a webinar on Friday and I just fell behind me. We did a webinar on Friday and we were asking people how they're succeeding. And one guy said, I'm kicking butt right now because I'm the only one in my category that's moved to a merchant fulfilled option. Having a merchant fulfilled option took my sales from declining to increasing. So think about like what you need to do to adapt to the market, even though it might just be a 1 week or a 3 week or a 1 month change. I think we now as Americans probably have a better sense of what's going on. This isn't just a 1 week or 2 week type of thing. We're going to be this way for the whole month of April, probably into part of May. And then the startup period is going to be slow. It's not like they're going to say, come out of your house and everyone's going to get out and like start going. So I think e-commerce and Amazon are going to be this way for a couple of months and we need to adapt our businesses.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I talked to you before we came on camera and told you that, you know, we sell our own private label brands on there. Right now, some of the brands that we have, we can't send in. Amazon's not letting us. So what do? You adjust. We adjusted. We went to, merchant fulfill a lot of products. And right now, I'm busy just shipping merchant fulfilled products. You have to be able to adjust or, like you said, pivot. People that are successful learn how to pivot. I mean, look at the grocery stores. Yes, there's people coming in there, but it's causing problems in the stores right now because they're gathering all in the stores. What are they doing? I saw it the other day. I don't know if you saw this article or not. Grocery stores are going to want to go, or some of them are going to test one-way aisles where you can go in one and
yeah,
out.
Trader Joe's wasn't completely at one-way aisles, but they were doing one in, one out of the store, and they had tape throughout the aisle showing you like how far you should be staying away from the person in front of you.
Yeah, it's just amazing. They're going to go to one way. I mean, you're going to start to see different things. I mean, I love the fact that the doctor's office, you have to go in and tell them you're there, but you wait outside in your car.
Oh, is that what they're doing?
Yeah, you can't even go in the building. My wife we went to the surgical doctors and a surgeon. We had to do an MRI, and I tried to step in that hospital. And as soon as I stepped in the hospital with her or in the doctor's with her, they said, sir, you got to wait out in your car until she's done. So, and then in the doctor's office, they told her they'll call her on her phone when they're ready for her.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of these things are going to be in place for a long time until we really get a handle and we get the supplies and the knowledge we need to be able to handle a crisis like this again. God forbid we never have one. But
I think in general, like some of the, like we talked about, disruption creates opportunity. So like, what's that going to look like? What's that going to look like when it hits? Like, are you going to be able to have a mobile app that tells the doctor that you're there so that you check in without ever going inside? Like, that's disruption that brings opportunity. And it's stuff that I think is very important to the overall mix of how we're going to live our lives. And I think that, those are all great things, because we all hate sitting in the waiting room waiting for things to never happen, right? So a lot of that disruption will occur, that's for sure.
absolutely. And then restaurants, I mean, they're going to have to figure out how to either space their tables or do something. I mean, a lot of them, are creative and they are doing takeout and things like that. Ones that never did takeout are doing takeout.
Yeah. So we talked about, those who were built to succeed will succeed. I talked to a buddy of mine from high school. He runs a restaurant in St. Louis. He's ran that restaurant for 20 years. And he said to me, he goes, I rebuilt a restaurant concept this week. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, He goes, well, he goes, we don't do takeout. We've never done takeout. We wrap people's food to go at the end of the day, but we don't do takeout. And he had to figure out how to build a takeout menu, how to do it with less staff. I mean, he had to figure a lot of different stuff out that ultimately has driven the success of his business. And today they're making revenue and they're generating sales and they have happy customers. And they're doing what they need to do so that, as he said, we're doing what we need to do so we can be here tomorrow, and we'll figure tomorrow out tomorrow.
Absolutely. All right, guys, we're coming up a little over an hour here. I'm going to let Jeff go here in a second. Jeff did have a free 30-day trial. I posted it up in the actual chat. You guys can see that. Be sure you guys take advantage of that. I mean, it's 30%, 30 days, and then 25% off your second month. I think that's a great thing. You're going to use the code ProSellerTalk. And especially take him up on his offer to look at your business. Download that file. You know, download the spreadsheet he was talking about, or the file. And
Yep.
he actually put the instructions in here, and I can get those to you if you guys don't have them. For those of you that are going to watch the replay, if you need this, I can get those instructions to you, and really take advantage of that. When you've got people that have the expertise like Jeff and the people that come on this show that are willing to come and share and help you grow your business, why wouldn't you take advantage of that? And right now, with over 2 million people home because of this virus, if nothing else, get your mind off of CNN, get your mind off of the TV, all that negative stuff. Educate yourself and learn so that when we do come out of this, you're going to be a much stronger person. You're going to possibly build some incomes by sitting at home, learning from these webinars and learning from these people that are sharing all this knowledge with you. Again, I do it at least a few hours a day. I get myself away from the TV and I just educate myself, because you know what? It's depressing. It's depressing when you see refrigerated trucks and they're putting bodies inside this. I mean, these people don't even get funerals. I mean, that's depressing when you can't even have a funeral. High school kids can't have graduations. College kids can't have graduations. All the things that are going on in the world right now is very depressing and can, quite frankly, make you feel sick. So take some time to build your inner strength and at least keep your health healthy, and provide yourself with knowledge for just a little bit of time and take yourself away from everything that's going on right now. I promise you, when you do that, it'll relax you. You won't feel as stressful, and it'll get you through. And again, Jeff's here. I'm here. Anything we can do for you, that's why we're here. Jeff, my pleasure having you here again. Good to catch up with you.
Yeah, good to see you.
Always doing great things. I haven't been to a conference in a while, just because of health issues and just a lot of things. But it's always good to, you know, get you back here. Like I said, I've seen you out there before doing what you do. I love what you do for the sellers, and continue to just stay healthy, you and your family. Take care of yourselves and keep doing what you do for sellers, man. We love you guys, and just do what you got to do to, you know, keep going forward and being positive.
Sounds good. Thanks, John. You too.
All right. Take care. Thank you so much.